Hello, everyone. I am thrilled to introduce you to Katie Quigley, who's a dear friend of mine from way back Microsoft days. She's done amazing things in the world of PR, events, marketing, and it's such an honor for me to introduce you to Katie. So without further ado, over to you, Katie.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here with you. You're just lovely. I am thrilled to be here. I am a longtime Microsoft employee, but now I'm at BMC Software. It's a great place to be as well. I've had a long career, like you said, in marketing, but really the most important part of my career are the people aspect. Who have I been able to help, impact, guide, coach, learn from? All of those things. Those are the things that really matter to me.
Oh, thanks, Katie. You know, why I'm so thrilled for you to be one of our first conversations in this series is I just saw you modeling servant leadership so beautifully at Microsoft. I've seen many people acknowledge you for that, and I think that's a direct connection to leaders who lead with respect. So why don't you help the audience understand how do you define respect, Katie?
Mm-hmm. Respect is having an open mind. It's listening more than talking. It's curiosity is a big part of it. Asking for understanding, asking questions, delving in, putting yourself into someone else's shoes to be able to truly have a connection and in an understanding for each other.
Wonderful. Gosh, the themes are so similar as I hear. You know, I know it's a basic question, but I love asking that because everyone's going to have their own definition of respect.
They are.
And yeah, so let's talk.
But at the bottom of it, right, it's all heart. Yeah, it's how
It
you
is.
make the other person feel.
Exactly. And because you've led large teams, you know, head of marketing, events, PR, all those amazing things, talk about the intersection of how, you know, let's bring your servant leadership to life. What are some of those ingredients that make you do the business of business, those hard decisions that you have to make and do it from a place of heart?
Yes, that was one of the things that I learned early on. Like I started out because of just who I am naturally. I learned a lot from my dad about servant leadership, is that I was probably a little too soft in the beginning, quite honestly, in the beginning of my career, beginning of managing, is that I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. I didn't want to step on toes. I didn't want people to not like me. And I realized that that actually wasn't always getting the work done. And so there has to be a balance of how do you treat people, how do you connect with them, but how do you actually get the work done and have impact? And through that, I realized that being direct, I love the Brené Brown, clear is kind, is so important because you're never going to make progress unless you are super clear with someone. And they're not going to ever learn if you are not super clear with them. And so I realized that business can be done and you can have great impact while still being authentically yourself as a leader.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I often say soft skills are actually the hard skills, right?
Right.
You and I work with many engineers that can be very
Yes, you do.
binary, right? Zeros and ones and yes and no. And there's
Right.
a lot of color and flavor in between.
Absolutely.
Let's go to, you know, what you just brought up. Let's talk about accountability and the connection with respect. Katie, I think that's a good segue from what you just opened, is tell us about how do you think about accountability as it relates to respect?
I think I've had some great managers along the way. And the ones that were really good were the ones that were very direct with me and that they would give me feedback that sometimes is hard to hear, but you learn a lot from it. Or that it might not be even just on your personal abilities. It might be on the project. It might be on, you know, whatever is needing to be done. Those that were to the point, held me accountable, called me out if I didn't have it, didn't do it in the right way, didn't get done what we were supposed to get done, are the ones that I appreciate the most, especially looking back, right? At the time, it might feel a little bit hard to hear things, but looking back, I was like, those are the times that I learned the most, is when someone held me accountable. And I had a coaching course very early on in my career. It was a leadership and coaching course, and he taught us all about being your word. And that is one of the guiding principles that I have, that if I say that I'm going to do something, I do that thing. And that if I can't, there's a conversation to be had. But no matter what I say, I will do. And so I'm super careful about what I actually commit to and what I say and what I can promise to do. And I think that has made such a difference in my career.
You know, I wanted to ask it as a question, but let me test this with you around the term holding people accountable, right? My judgment or definition of that is very power differentiated. So you tell somebody to do something, you expect them to do it. There's no contract, there's no clear agreement.
Right.
My preferred way of talking about accountability is support accountability, which means, you know, yes, you ask somebody to do something or give them feedback and give corrective action, but then you check on agreement and refinement, and you negotiate so that you both align. And then you also identify, as the leader asking somebody to do something, how you're going to support them. Right? You're not just passing it over the wall to them. It's like, you know, do you need a regular check-in to check on quality, check on ideation, et cetera? How can I support you? Or escalation, you know, do you need me to speak to someone above in order to open doors and get this done? Is very much a teaming aspect to things. Amy Edmondson's term, right? For
Edmondson's just one of my favorites. Yes.
Yeah, because we talk about collaboration, and I love her distinction, because collaboration means we'll meet, we'll talk about what each person will do, then they'll go off and do it in their silo.
Right.
Teaming means we really dive in together and go, this is a gnarly problem that we haven't solved before. Just one mind can't get the best outcome of it.
Right.
How do we bring the collective mind and ideas and innovation to bring everyone's best strengths into making a better outcome? That's what I love about teaming from Amy Edmondson.
Absolutely. You bring people along with you. You gather ideas, you gather input, you continue to evolve your ideas. And there's a couple things with that when you are holding someone accountable for something, and a few things. One is that when you have a conversation of, okay, here's a project that we have to have done, here are the things that I would like you to do, you have a conversation of, here are the things you're accountable for, here's the things where you need my help, right? And so that's that conversation, is that here are the things that I'm going to promise to you, whether it's resources or time or the ability to, you know, set something else aside to focus on this. There's this negotiation, like you mentioned, that happens. And I'm a huge advocate for countering. Like, someone says, will you give me your report by Friday? You say, okay, I can either give you a report by Friday, but I cannot do this. Which one would you like me to do? Or I can't give it to you by Friday, but I can give it to you by Monday. Does that work? And I am all for, it's not just a yes or no. It's this is what's possible, and this will make for the best outcome for all of us involved. And it's a conversation to get to the right answer for something.
Absolutely, Katie. And you know, you're taking me to, I know you work globally, and so when we think of cultural differences, you know, geo-wise, this issue of like really unpacking that, right? And I'm reminded of my days of working at Microsoft with vendors in India, and how we treated them the same as we would anyone, with the binary, like, yep, this is you tomorrow, and just assume that it's done. And really, there was a lot of it depends. And if we had created that safe space, which is what we learned quickly and did do, and of course correct with that effort, knowledge process offshoring, was to really understand, you know, what's possible and give them space to renegotiate, like, well, not tomorrow morning, but tomorrow evening.
Right. Yes.
And to ask questions. The curiosity piece, I find, is so different by culture. And a lot of it's ingrained with how we're educated. In the US, you know, most education systems really celebrate asking questions of a professor and digging in with contrary views, whereas in cultures like India, that's really looked down upon, and it's very bookish, it's very academic, and you really don't challenge authority and the professor. You kind of go with what's being taught.
Right. It's such a good aware of that.
Yeah, Katie, how does that play into your experience with respect in the workplace?
I think that's such a great point. And yes, we work, in a global environment, or even if the person is sitting next to you, maybe they have come from another part of the world and their values are different, or from, the, next county over and their values are still different. So I think it's getting to know someone a little bit on a more personal level. It can take 5 minutes, the beginning of a project that you're working on with someone, or if you're creating a new relationship, you're like, tell me a little bit about your background, or tell me a little bit about the way that you like to communicate. Those are very simple things just to start the conversation. And I think then you can get a little bit of the, this is how I work best, or this is, how you're going to hear from me. And it starts that relationship off on a better foot. You're still going to learn as you go. There's still going to be, steps that you take that are missteps, but you at least have started that opening up of it's more than just a person that's, you think is exactly like you, because they're never going to be exactly like you.
The piece that you just covered, Katie, is also just for our audience, right? Very classic organizational development practice that many leaders I find don't deploy, which is even in a meeting, even if you meet with people regularly,
Mm-hmm.
doing a check-in, like
Mm-hmm.
I like to use weather report. It can be one word, like I'm sunny today, or I'm stormy, or gives you as a leader a sense of where people are, so you can be tuned in to
Mm-hmm.
just what their current state is like. Doesn't mean you have to go probe and handle it right there in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But again, a form of respect is being tuned into that. Then you'll know when it's time to check in and see if somebody needs support or what's
Mm-hmm.
going on for them to the extent they're willing to share. Is,
Mm-hmm.
is that a practice, Katie? I imagine knowing you practice that with your teams, your team people.
Yeah, with some teams that I've led, we've had really great practices around like the one word check-in. I love that. It could be, is there anything that's going on for you that you need to speak up about, talk about, get out of the way before we get into our meeting. It particularly works when it's a safer space, when it's an established team, people know each other. The one word works better when you don't know each other just quite as well. It's like, how are you feeling about this meeting we're about to have? And people will mostly be somewhat positive, but it also gives the time to pause, because most times we're, running from one meeting to a next, especially now that most things are virtual. You're jumping off one call and onto another, and the context switching is massive sometimes. And so just that 5 minutes at the beginning of a meeting to either have a short conversation about like, hey, how are you, how's everything going? How's your day going? How was your weekend? Sometimes it's just enough to like have your brain reset and to understand kind of where you are at that point in time.
Yeah, I think it's such a critical practice to cultivate respect in a workplace, is to just do that and be tuned into it.
Mhm.
And yeah, like you said, it works just as well with people you don't know.
Mhm.
And
Right.
and what I love about what you described is setting context with that, very specific question versus the how are you?
Right.
Doesn't really mean anything, but to say, how are you entering into this agenda or
Yep.
this decision we're about to make? I love
Right.
that.
Yeah, you and I both have learned that from having teenage kids, right? I'm just a yes to a question. See, how are you? Fine. So
Absolutely.
you
Boy,
have to be able to
that's,
think more about like what will start a conversation versus
oh
just
my gosh. Yeah,
action.
no, that's a huge topic, and I'll have to have you back to dig deeper into that in terms of, yeah, and you can coach me on how to manage young adults.
Yeah. There's actually a presentation that I've done in the past where it's what have I learned from being a manager that's helped me with parenting, and what's helped me, what have I learned from parenting that's helped me with managing. There's so much connection there.
There's a book in that, Katie. I think you
I
need to
think so.
go on to that.
Right.
Let's see, since we're there, how about what are you finding? There's a lot said and lots of research around generational differences in the workplace.
Mhm.
What
Yes.
are you finding as it relates to respect?
The thing that I've noticed, and I now have a son that's 25 and a son that's 23, so both out of college and in the workforce. And so I'm learning a lot from them of things, maybe assumptions that I had that were incorrect or were generalized. And I am finding they are also looking for the connection. Like, treat me like a person, don't just throw things at me. build a relationship, understand where I'm going, ask me questions. And so it's they are looking to those that have been in the workplace to have an interest in them, to have, you know, a care for where they are trying to grow and learn and develop things. And so it's been so great. I learn so much from them every day. I have reverse mentoring built in with my kids. It's fantastic.
I love it. Yes, we were doing reverse mentoring way back at
We
Microsoft.
were. We
It's
were, and that was so
fantastic.
useful. Yes. And actually, a few of those people I'm still doing mentoring with both directions, right? They're, you know, they're now a little, you know, 10 years into their career, whereas they were in the beginning before. But where they are versus where I am, I'm still learning so much from them. It's great.
I'm so glad you went there, Katie. You know, I literally just went to a flashback of my first experience of being a receiver or reverse mentoring, and the flavor that was so unique with that design and
Mhm.
as it relates to respectful leadership is
Mhm.
how that same leader who was the senior most person in
Mhm.
the reverse mentoring in our group, I
Mhm.
could just feel the visceral shift in
Mhm.
his energy
Mhm.
and real care, and how that built my confidence
Mhm. That's amazing.
outside of the reverse mentoring on how to bring topics to him, how
Mhm.
to engage, you know, peer to peer, which
Mhm.
I actually believe even the most dogmatic leaders, like if you can really push up against that with value, that's really respected, regardless of what level you're at. I mean, literally, we've been around Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and the
Right.
works. And I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
think it's any different
Mhm.
with them as it is with
Yeah.
others.
I agree. There was actually a senior leader that I had as a mentor, and it was. I will always remember this because he had an aha moment when we were talking one time, because he's what he didn't realize until we had a conversation about something that had just happened is that when he has an idea, he was a corporate vice president. When he had an idea, he would just say something like, you know, I was thinking of X, Y, and Z. And so he didn't realize what then happened is that, like, so many people would just activate and just make that happen because they're like, well, he said he wanted this done. He's like, I actually didn't. I was just, you know, throwing out an idea. And so we had this conversation. He's like, okay, from now on, I'm going to say, hey, this is just an idea and you don't have to do it. And I noticed him doing that in other situations. And it was so great. And I felt honored that I was able to help, you know, him see what the impact was that he was having. And just he was an amazing leader already, and so just even that recognition was super cool.
Thank you. Yeah, we've both seen that time and time again. And so do that course correct and recognize how to shift that communication and expectation creates permission, right? For people to then know. Yeah, gosh, there's so much more, Katie. I feel like we could go on here, but we do need to wrap up. Any parting thoughts that we haven't covered? And definitely, I'd like you to leave the audience with your top tips on how to have more respectful workplaces.
I think, you know, one of the things that I've learned along the way is that when you enter into a conversation with someone, it goes to that conversation we had about like coming from one meeting to another. They might be coming in and you feel like, wow, they're not, you know, they're upset about something, they're not happy with something I'm doing. I'm, you know, there's our relationship isn't going well. But what you have to remember is that there's so much more to that person than them stepping into that meeting. They could have had a rough morning with their kids. They could have just had a tough conversation with somebody on their team. They might be trying to figure out a problem. And so most of the time, the way someone is showing up isn't about you. It's really not. It's about what's going on for them. And so I think it's giving people grace and understanding that, and just taking everything with kind of a grain of salt and saying, this is just a moment in time for them. I am sure there's so many things I could do. What could I do to help make that better or the conversation go more smoothly? And I found that I have been, you know, it's been a practice for me to not take things personally in that way. And it makes a big difference. So I think that's probably one of the biggest learnings I would share.
Yeah, I love it. And let me be explicit with everybody in hearing Katie on this, that she's modeled with her sermon leadership that when you invest in doing it that way, you're saving both, you know, the pain and the time, productivity, business costs. that happen when you do fire drills and all those escalations that happen when you don't do these practices as a practice,
Yes.
not as a good to have, but as a must have, right, Katie?
I agree. And you mentioned Amy Edmondson, and she's amazing. She's at Harvard, and she has done all this research around, leading with empathy, and that it truly is create in a safe space, and it's creating stronger business results. Like you said, productivity. People feel safer to have bolder suggestions. Step out of their comfort zone, do work that they didn't do before, work team together better. And so the bottom line literally is impacted in a positive way by leading with empathy.
I love it. What a lovely way to close. Well, Katie, thank you so much. Again, it's been
Thank
a
you very
thrill and
much.
an honor to have you today.
Thank you for having me. You're
And
wonderful.